Hey everybody, I want to welcome you to the next step of your journey to a better life. We take all these steps, guys, in order for you to develop that skill and be able to make any changes in any area of your life. As a result, in the end of this journey, you're going to be learning just that. You're going to have the fundamental skills, fundamental strategies, fundamental mindset and psychology in order to make those changes in your life. And I am super thrilled and excited for you guys, for you on taking that journey and actually continuing that journey up until now. And I want to remind you what we have done so far. Well, so far we kind of finished the first chapter of the whole program, which we have trained and learned and practiced our mind and our psychology. I feel very confident now that you will be able to go through any obstacles, any fears in your life by knowing and practicing what we have already learned and practiced together with you. Last step though, we have started to learn a little bit about the skills and about the knowledge which we have to have in order to implement those strategies which we're going to be learning, right? And we have discussed with you and discovered that there are two ultimate success factors, as we call them. And the first of them is worth a damn. And the second is, which you already probably should know by now, is deserve it factor. Those two factors, we realized and learned that they play a crucial role for us to succeed in life. And in order to succeed in life and get to those outcomes and results which we want out of life, we actually have to constantly evolve, constantly improve these two factors, and basically make sure we create our life in a way we all the time in ongoing process of improving those two factors, worth in them and deserve it factors. And then we learned that in order to improve them, we basically have to do two things. The one is to become a learning machine, as I call it. In other words, we have to all the time acquire the knowledge in very various industries and niches and areas of our life. And then what we need to do is to apply that knowledge and implement it into our life. And that's how we train our skills, acquire new skills, and improve already existing ones. And that is magic. We have also discussed with you that in order to implement this knowledge, we have to work with these two different groups of skills. The first one is tangible skills, your technical skills. And the second one is intangible skills, your intangible skills. Skills like passion, like energy, like leadership, like awareness, like wisdom, and things like, and on and on and on and on. And I have introduced you to those skills. And see, those skills are super important. Why do they important for us? Well, for starters, as I said, the knowledge itself, it's kind of not very effective and efficient way to exist, because the knowledge only can cover a little bit of the value which you can bring to the world by maybe, I don't know, participating in some kind of conversations and having the theoretical knowledge. You can show off a little bit and you can bring the value to the table by showing yourself and showing how smart you are and how many things you understand and know about. But the knowledge which is actually implemented into your life increases the value exponentially. So you have to strive, and all of us, we have to strive to implement the knowledge. And what is the crucial part of implementing it is to have the skills. And we have also discussed that the second group, which is intangible skills, is the most important ones. Those are the skills which help us to implement the knowledge on the most efficient and effective way. That's why, guys, today I'm going to be introducing you to another intangible skill which you gotta have in possession, which you gotta acquire and practice. Because that skill will support and guarantee you to be successful in making any change in any area of your life. Not only we're going to be learning about that skill itself, but we're also going to practice, and we're also going to be learning the methods and strategies, the particular strategy, which practical strategy, which step by step can reinforce that skill and make sure you are pumping up that skill like a muscle and you're getting a lot out of it. And only having in possession that intangible skill, guys, will enable you, truly enable you, and will guarantee you the results of any change, meaning you will be able to do any change you want, guaranteed, in any area of your life. So if you want to make a change for the better, you will be able to make a change for the better in any main pillars of the life you want to change it in. Health, wealth, love, happiness, fulfillment, you name it. All of them. How excited is that? What do you think? All right, let's start. So I call this step the natural course of changes and the power of experiments. You know, this kind of became a tradition. I kind of split up each step in these two different kind of subcategories. And it's not necessarily going to happen that same way further on, but for this step's sake, I also have these two parts. So the first part is the natural course of changes, and the second part is the power of experiments, which in first part we're going to learn the skill, and in second part we're going to train this skill and learn the strategy of how to actually to reinforce and always develop and move forward with that skill. Let's start with the first part, which is the natural course of change. Why do I want to talk about the change? And by the way, you probably already figured that out, and you probably have already understood and heard so many words of change which I am mentioning in all these steps. I always say, hey guys, you have to change yourself in order to get and become that person, to get something out of your life. I said we're working on these steps in order for you to be able to make a change in any area of your life. So I have used this word in very many occasions. It was not for nothing, guys. The change plays crucial role in our life, in our ability to actually get to the results and get to the outcomes which we want to get to. You see, the change, I think, in my opinion, in opinion of others I learned from, is the basic law of nature. It exists on its own, whether we want it to be and exist or we don't. It exists on its own. It's kind of standalone. And even if we don't want to change or we don't like the change itself happening all around. And we, in my opinion, have to be prepared for this change. We have to get into the partnership with this change, I would even say. But some of you, by listening to me and actually thinking all the time, why is that Igor mentioning this change all the time? What if I don't want to change? What if I will be better off without the change? I kind of feel comfortable without the change. Can I then succeed in any area of your life? Can I still be prepared for any change in my life? Can I get the outcomes and results out of life what I want if I do not agree and don't want to change? Well, unfortunately, guys, my answer to you is no, you cannot. You cannot achieve and get those things out of life without changing. Whether changing yourself, whether changing environments around you, whether changing maybe people around you, or changing those people who are around you, and so on and so on and so on. Because change is inevitable. A change is happening without even our participation, as I mentioned before. And this is the matter of the question whether we want to participate in that change and actually be in control of the change and make sure the change is happening in the way we are getting all those things, the results, the outcome out of life, what we want, or the change will actually control us and change will control our life. And that change might happen randomly in a way it's going to get us off the track of getting anything which we want out of life. So it's for us to choose whether we want to participate or not. And for you, and to prove maybe a little bit of my point, I want to quote one brilliant guy called Charles Dawkins. Charles, what was his name? I have my notes here. Charles Darwin. I'm sorry about that. Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin, in his book, The Origin of Species, which, by the way, I strongly suggest you to read. That book is amazing. It will blow your mind, literally, and it will let you understand the change and importance of the change on a very deep level. And by the way, practicing the change, we all becoming who? Adaptability machine. This is the skill I want to go over with you today. Adaptability, right? We have to adapt to the entire world around us, to ourselves, to other people. So listen what the Charles Darwin has to say in his book, and I will quote him. All right? So, it is not the most intellectual of species which survives. It's not the strongest which survives. The species that survives is the one that most able to adapt and adjust to constantly changing environment it finds itself in. Just listen to this. Put on a pause, get back and listen it once again. I repeat you that quote once again. It is not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It's not the most strongest that survives. The species that survives is the one who most able to adapt and adjust. The thing what we're talking about with you right now, the changeability, to always changing environment. So he states, and that is the truth, and we're gonna make some example of it. The environment we are in always changing around us, with whether we want it or not. And we find ourselves in those environments. So it's up to us whether we want to change with them and strike some kind of stability, which we're going to be talking about that today, or we want to be stubborn and do not want to change. Though the environment around us is changing on its own. And by the way, when we're talking about the environment and species, the species obviously us, human beings, and environments can be different. Political environment, emotional environment, spiritual environment, the moral environment, social environment, psychological environment, different kind of environments we go through the life and participate in. By the way, is body our environment? Yes, it is. We basically live in this body, in this present body, and this is also the environment, which, by the way, constantly changing. Let me give you some examples for you to actually get in, touch that up a little bit, this theory, of the Charles Darwin, which we have offered in his The Origin of Species book, which, by the way, I'm going to be putting on the book list to this video, and you're going to be able to find the link, and you will be able to purchase that book and just read this book. I really suggest you to do that. So let me make some examples just to make sure we kind of understand the necessity of the change on a very deep level. Just let's take your body. Your body is the environment which always changes. So who survives? That means we are as human beings. When do we survive? When we are intellectually strong, Then we are physically strong? No, when we are able to adapt and go with the changes of our bodies and kind of adapt our life to the changes what happen with our bodies, because our body is an environment. I will make you an example. What happening with our body with us knowing or not? Our body changes constantly. Just take the biggest organ of our body, which is, by the way, skin. Our skin. Guys, our skin regenerates itself to once per 27 days. Every 27 days, our skin entirely changes and regenerates itself. And by the way, each of us carry around 8 pounds of it. Just imagine that. And that happens without our interactions, without our participation. Our bones regenerate themselves. They grow up until one of the moments, and then they start to regenerate each other. And they regenerate fully every 10 years. Bones, remember, imagine that. Our body is made out of bones. And how crazy and awesome and amazing it is. Our bones regenerate themselves once per 10 years. Aging, our body aging is the natural process of a change, because change is the basic law of nature, and therefore our body changes. It basically deteriorates itself with the time. In other words, our body is getting bad, as some kind of grocery which is sitting on the table under the sun is going bad. Our body does the same. Now the question is, do we want to participate in this process of change? Do we want to interact and be adaptive enough to actually adjust ourselves to that environment? Let's make this example with the body. Do we want our body to age limitlessly on its own, or we want to interact? Do we want to follow our diet? Do we want to exercise? Do we want to eat healthy, sleep healthy? Or do we want to eat junk food, use alcohol, have sleepless nights, do not exercise? In this case, will our body deterioration process speed up or slow down? It will probably speed up, right? Don't we want to slow it down? Don't we want to slow down the aging? I bet we do. Therefore, we want to interact, and we want to interrupt into that process. And in order to do that, we have to learn how to be adaptable, right? All right, so this is the question, do we want to participate or not? Another example for you guys is nature. Is nature changing? Well, the answer is yes. Look at our nature. We have 4 seasons: winter, summer, fall, and spring. And they all kind of cyclically change each other and replace each other. So the change is happening all the time. At the same time, each season might be different from one year to another, right? It changes all the time. The change is the basic law of nature. Now, let's take our relationships. Do our relationships change? Of course they do. Now the question is, if we do not participate in this change, meaning if we're not working on our relationships, what's going to happen with them? They're going to improve, or they're going to get worse. I think, automatically, if we're not going to take a look at them, if we're not going to take care of them, if we're not going to prioritize them, they're going to get worse, not better. And that natural change is happening on its own. And without our participation, in most of the cases, in getting worse, not better. So we need to adapt, and we need to interrupt this change by participating. How do we participate? We will cover that in pretty soon here, okay? Another example is your business, your career. What do you think is going to happen if you're going to stop changing? If you're going to stop acquiring the knowledge? If you're going to stop acquiring the skills? Will the value which you bring to others and to the world increase or decrease? Will others outcompete you, or you will outcompete them? I think the answer is obvious. You're going to lose this competition if you're going to stay put. if you're not going to change, if you're not going to make and try to improve yourself, others will take your place. Others will take your job, and you're going to lose that job. Another example with your business. What's going to happen with your business if the economy is changing, but you are being stubborn and you just want to make sure you do the business the same way you've done it? You don't want to change. What's going to happen with your business? Will it improve or will it probably bankrupt? Well, I think that's the second. It will become worse. So it's up to us, guys, whether we just want to sit on the sidelines and kind of take a look at the change for the changes happening and think this is our comfort zone, and we just let the change happen on its own. I would say that would be the not most efficient and most effective and productive approach which we would take. And it would take us so much more time to get to the goals and the achievement and the outcomes which we want to get to, if ever. So that is the importance of understanding the change. And I will explain why do I pound on that topic so much, guys. It's just because we used to look at the change, as I said, as something we're being pushed to make and do. And our natural feeling of the change is that this is unnatural. I don't want to change. Why do you need me to change? Igor, why do you think I need to change in order to get something out of life? It sounds so hard and not necessarily. But that's why I'm trying to explain you these concepts which are developed by brilliant minds all over the world, that the change is inevitable. And it's actually the basic law of nature. And it's happening whether we want it or not. So the question, as I said, is whether we want to take the participation in that or not, right? I'll give you an example how crucial change might be. And this example cannot be more relevant to these times right now than ever. So we're going through the COVID times. And by the way, if you're listening and watching to this video and the COVID is over, COVID era, as I call it, is over, good for us, but we can take a look back and it's still, the story is still going to be relevant to you because you already know what happened because of the COVID, right? But look what happened with the businesses during the COVID. And this is the true story here in the United States. Just imagine the highway, right? And we have two different restaurants on a highway. And they are all, both of them, 1 mile apart from each other. As soon as the COVID hit and the government started to close the restaurants and small businesses and basically everything just to make sure to prevent the spread of the COVID, what one of those restaurants and owners of those restaurants have done is they closed the entire restaurant. They said, well, that's what is happening. I'm going to close it. I'm going to wait until the times gonna get back to the normal. Get it? Change is inevitable. It's the basic law of nature, guys, and the change is happening going forward. It's never going backwards. But that guy, and a lot of us, by the way, in the COVID times, we look and strive and wait and procrastinate because we think we are waiting for something which will come back to the normal. We are going against the change. So that guy closes the restaurant, and guess what happens down the line? The restaurant bankrupts. It loses all their clients, all the revenues, and he shuts down the restaurant. There's only a building there standing right now on the side of that highway. In the other restaurant, the owner was not agree with that change, meaning he was not agree to give up. He was not agree to close his restaurant. He was not agree just to look at the things as they are. He was going to make a change. He said, I have to adapt to that situation. So they, with the whole family, with his family, the true story, they went to the Home Depot and they have bought all the necessary tools and materials in order for them to build this open air barn, if you call it that way, right? Like the huge space outside of the restaurant on the open area. And he created basically the line, the drive-through for his restaurant. And not only the drive-through, but you could also easily sit or stand there 6 feet apart and eat on the open air. And this is allowed. So they have built it and they have adapted to that change. What happened with the result? They were thriving and they were alive as never. The business were going up exponentially. They didn't have such lines. They literally would have the huge line. And if we go by that highway, you would just see this huge line and you'd be amazed. What is happening? Well, the thing is happening, they got so much of the demand because they were ready to change. And they found themselves on the other side of the change as better off. You get it? This is the vibe. This is the essence of change and adaptability. You have to adapt to the changing environment. And the one who survives is the one who is best able to adapt and adjust. Not the strongest, not the most intellectual. Maybe that guy who closed the restaurant was more intellectual, with the higher IQ. Maybe he was the stronger guy, but he was not adaptable. He was not able and ready to adapt and adjust, and as a result, he lost it all. But the other guy maybe was not that smart or with that high of IQ, but at the same time that guy was adaptable and he was ready to sacrifice anything just to adapt to the changing environment, and he won that battle. He actually did not battle that. He adapted and he adjusted himself to that changing environment and he became that changing environment. And you cannot lose if you become the changed environment you find yourself in, because you are getting stronger together with that change. You are becoming the nature because you play along with the basic laws. You're not trying to break them, you work with them. How great is that? How much of the power is that in that example? The same with your body, by the way. And by the way, have you realized that what I'm saying is you kind of try to balance things up? I'm kind of suggesting you do not go into the extremes of doing nothing or maybe overdoing things. Can you feel that vibe? And we get into the point where I want to say this. So why, as an example, we have such guys who are ready to change? And why, as an example, we have a lot of us, majority of us, by the way, who are not ready to change, who are afraid to change, who are being so stubborn and not flexible to change and not adaptable at all? Why do we have these different groups? And majority of us actually do not want to change. Well, for starters, you already know, we have different beliefs. We have a lot of fears, and we sometimes are afraid to start small, to be judged by others, and that's why we kind of procrastinate and do not go and get on this journey for a change. But this part aside, let's say we're not afraid. Let's say we want to go through. Let's say we have powerful beliefs and everything. Why can we still be stubborn and kind of protect ourselves from the change? Well, the thing is, the mind is the reason for that. You see, we have very old mind. The mind appeared, I don't know, don't quote me on that, but 1,000 years ago. And since then, our mind has changed very little, unfortunately. Like by 1 or 2%, just think about it. We live in our modern world with such technologies around us, with so many changes which has happened since back then, but our minds stayed the same. We live with that same archaic mind, as I call it. The mind which only understands, by the way, and this is the reason we are afraid to change, understands the black or white. Just think about it. 1,000 years ago, the caveman, what are they were doing? What kind of problems and issues they were solving? Well, most of the problems and issues they were solving is to survive and to get the food. That's it. And for them, they either leave or they die. They either starve to death or they get fed. That's it. And that's why they hunt. That's why they try to kill the animals and get the food to the table. And they look at the things black and white. I either go and kill the animal or the animal gonna kill me. I either go and bring the food or we're gonna starve to death. That's it. So imagine that mentality with our DNA and DNA being instilled in our mind, and our mind lives with those same rules right now at this particular moment. And therefore our mind pushes us to look at things as black and white. I will give you examples. Let's take your health. And let's say you kind of decided to work on yourself and you decided to improve your health. In particular, you want to improve the health of your heart. You want your heart to be strong. And want to start going for sports and do cardio. And you came up with this idea you have to run. And you start running, right? You're trying to make this change. Well, with running, you start to feel that your legs hurt, maybe your ankles hurt, maybe your hips hurt. Something is not right, right? But you are being stubborn. Your goal is to get your heart healthy. And you only right now know and understand that it can be done through running. So you ignore the pain in your hips, in your legs, in your ankles, and you keep running. Well, this is the black and mind kind of thinking. Because you might also think somewhere in between. You might come up with this idea, maybe should I try the swimming better? And the swimming will allow me to actually still get to my goal, which is get my heart healthier, but not damage my ankles and my legs, right? Maybe I should cycle. So I want to try to find the middle ground here, not just to be stubborn and keep running, because this is the only thing I know and understand how to do. So that would be the black and white thinking in the kind of health department. Now, the business. Well, I can be stubborn as that guy and said, hey, I'm not going to change. I'm going to wait for the times come back to the normal. And this is black and white thinking. The time either change and come back to the normal, or I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to just sit and wait for the government to help me. This is black and white thinking, guys. The opposite of that is thinking as that other guy who survived. Hey, I have to adapt, I have to adjust. What should I do to keep serving? Because my goal is to keep serving and give a gift of the good food to others. So that's my goal. How do I achieve that? Well, I achieve it by adapting to the changing environment which is between me and my goal. And that's how I start to work with it. Make sense? Another example, your relationships. Well, at the beginning of your relationships, you pay attention to each other, you care about each other, you help each other, and you are so thrilled and happy. And at some point, you start to see that you are still that same man or the woman. You still care about the person, you pay attention, you put the priorities, first priority on your partner. But your partner kind of stopped doing that. Your partner actually prioritizing the things in a different way now, and your partner, you feel like your partner is not contributing to your relationships. What would be the black and white thinking here? Well, the black and white thinking here would be just to get mad at the partner and say, okay, I'm gonna stop caring about him or her. I'm gonna stop paying attention to our relationships. I'm gonna stop inviting to the dates. I'm gonna stop to figure it out and allocate the time to our relationships until that guy or girl or my partner will start doing the same. That is the black and white thinking, which actually destabilizes the whole situation. We can lose their partner and relationships. We can lose the business. We can lose the health we might have if we try to strive for something more stable, something in the middle. Find the middle ground, like go to our partner and talk to the partner and say how do we feel, and maybe ask of how we can reprioritize our relationships. And what can I do to actually help my partner to spend more time on our relationships? How can I help them or her in the different areas of their life which they occupied with right now to actually come and get back to our relationships? Would it be a better approach? And that approach is your adaptability skill, is the skill of looking at the situation as something you want to stabilize and find the middle ground. And I'm getting to the point here, guys. I want to introduce you with something, because these examples, I think they got us, at least me, and I hope you, to the point where we start to feeling okay. So to live in the extremes, two extremes, black and white, is not a very good idea, though we're doing that and we live our life, majority of our life, through that prism of looking at the things at black and white, of going from one extreme to another, whether I'm gonna work out and will do it hard, or I'm not gonna be doing it at all. Is it a good approach? No, it's a black and white. It's not the most efficient. It might not be very bad or wrong, because there is no bad and wrong, there is no black and white, remember? It's rather 50 shades of gray, right? Not 50 shades of gray, but shades of gray. I would rather, and I would suggest you rather live in the shades of gray of your life, not in the black and white of your life. You're going to be better off. And here I want to introduce you to this strategy which supports this concept, and it's called evolutionary stable strategy. It was created or evolved and developed by Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins actually introduced this strategy, evolutionary stable strategy, and it's quite complex and complicated on its own, but in a nutshell, I will explain what it is. It basically says that if there are two or more groups in one ecosystem, then most of the time those groups will make choices and communicate with each other in a way it will and eventually will become stable. They're going to interact with each other and make choices in a way their union and their ecosystem will become stable. It makes sense. And we can also apply that strategy to just those examples we have just made and went over with you. So, evolutionary stable strategy with example and practice. And by the way, that evolutionary stable strategy not only working in between human beings, but it working in nature as well. And I'm going to give you two examples, one for nature and one for human beings. So in nature, and that's completely true, imagine the grass, just green grass growing outside. It appeared in our world, on our planet at some point, right? And it appeared long time ago. Let's call it Mr. Grass. Mr. Grass was born very long time ago, and Mr. Grass lived this beautiful life of having a lot of sun and therefore growing very tall and green and leafy and very happy. Life with a lot of rain, where it could easily drink the water and never be thirsty. And it was thriving, and not only surviving but thriving. But at some point, the cow showed up and appeared and being created on this planet. And to survive and thrive for the cow decided to eat the grass. And the grass became the only survival mechanism for the cow. So now Mr. Grass has a problem. It had such a wonderful life before, which is about to be destroyed by the cow. So now the Mr. Grass has two choices. One is to give up and die by being eaten by this creature called cow. The second choice is to strike the evolutionary stable strategy with that cow. And that's what the grass literally did. Obviously, it did not happen literally. The grass did not actually talk to the cow, but the events and evolution of their relationships happened literally in that way. As a result, Mr. Grass cut the deal with the cow. How? If you didn't know about that, the cow now has this bacteria in their saliva. And as soon as the cow eats the grass, that saliva on the tongue of the cow gets on the grass. And grass actually are being healed by that bacteria. That bacteria heals the grass, and grass grows up and thrives and survives Believe it or not, but this is absolute truth. That's how the grasses survived, and that's how thrived. And still the Mr. Grass is with us here. And we are so happy to see it and walk over it and work with it. That's why that evolutionary stable strategy works and brings those two or more groups, in this case grass and the cow, in the ecosystem, in our environment, and they start communicate with each other, interact with each other, eat one another, interact with each other, or make choices. Like grass made the choice to cut the deal with the cow. Okay, you can eat us, but please give me that medicine, your saliva, for us to keep growing. And by cutting the deal, they create the stability. They both can survive now. The cow can live and eat and be fed, and the grass can still grow and be happy and be healed after it's been eaten. How great is that? That's what evolutionary stable strategy does. Another example, again, from your body. You gotta cut the deal. You see, instead of being black and white, you have to replace it with actually cutting a deal with yourself, cutting the deal with the environment around you, cutting a deal with people around you, cutting the deal, striving the evolutionary stable strategy, and not breaking things and go to the extremes. Example with your body. If you want to start taking care of your health, would it be great, and you've never done it before, would it be great you would start exercising and right away in the first day you would run a marathon? Would you survive? I think no. A lot of us would probably die, maybe having a heart attack. Why? Is that because we look at this at the black and white? We said if we're going to stop doing the exercising, we just go full in. And this is black or white thinking. And our body did not agree with us. We did not strike a deal with our body. Our body was not ready for that. Our body was not ready to adjust and adapt that quickly. And therefore our body did not agree with that. And it also got us to the extreme of the heart attack or something else. And something bad might happen with us. So we need to strike the deal. We have to create this evolutionary stable strategy. What would it be? Well, we would start running maybe 1 mile first, maybe even half a mile. Let's just walk or jog for 5 or 10 minutes and see how it works. See how do we feel. And let's strike that evolutionary stable strategy with our body. And we're going to be better off. We're going to adapt to each other. And then body going to agree, okay, you're doing good. Let's do it. Let me start working on the muscles. Let me start working on making the heart better and stronger, because I want to do more with you, Igor, if it's me, right? Doing all those things, or it's you, whatever your name is. How great would it be? Another example in your business. Let's say you have the partner, you have the equal shares, and you also have equal salary. And then at some point, your partner would just start working on your business half time. Your partner would be starting preoccupied with other things in his or her life. Show up for work only like every other day. The black and white thinking, and not thinking of adaptability, not thinking of evolutionary stable strategy, the black and white thinking would be is to get angry at the partner, to come to the partner and say, hey, it's not fair, I don't want to do this anymore, let's split up. That is not evolutionary stable strategy. This is the extreme black and white. What would happen with that approach? You might easily lose the connection with the partner. You might easily lose the partner. You might easily lose the whole business because of that. On the other hand, you might come to the partner and explain how do you feel. You might come to the partner and try to cut the deal, strike the evolutionary stable strategy. What might it be in this case? Well, you might offer your partner, okay, it's fair enough. You have another side thing going on for your life. I'm happy for that. But please, let's just, cut your salary in half. Because let's face it, you only have the time here at the company and you bring only 50% of the value of that value you were bringing before. So it would be only right thing and efficient thing to do is just to cut your salary in half. and proceed. The company will benefit, you will benefit, you still benefit because you have 50% of your shares, and I will not feel bad about that. That would be a completely different approach coming from the place of adaptability because the environment has changed. Yes, you have agreed with the partner on the deal before, and your stubbornness might be, and the black and white thinking might say, hey, we already agreed before. Why? What the heck? Why have you changed the rules? Well, the rules did not change. The environment changed. But that change is basic law of nature as we know now, and we don't have any excuse to be angry or mad at it. We know what we have to adapt, and we have to come up with the evolutionary stable strategy to strike with our partner in this case, or to strike with our body in case of our health, and get the results and stabilize that environment and grow with it and be with that growth. Because growth, by the way, brings you happiness and fulfillment. If you are in the process of growth and in process of progress, it gets you fulfilled and happy. And that's what we all want out of life. Not things, not material stuff, but the emotional stuff. How powerful is that? What do you think? So I want to conclude on this part. Guys, in order to survive, in order to thrive in our life, in order to achieve all those things which we need to achieve, we have to change. We have to embrace the change, and we have to be adaptable. We have to become adaptability machines. And I hope I gave you enough of examples, enough of the concept, practicality, and those beautiful minds like Richard Dawkins or Charles Darwin, which came up with those concepts and read and wrote about it in their books, which are available, and I'm going to put this book list in this video, which helped us to understand that and showed us how is that natural thing of change happening in nature as well, with us knowing, want it that or don't, doesn't matter, it's still happening, so we might as well just hop on that train, which is already going, so it's gonna go forward without us or with us. It's up to us to decide. Okay? So now, I really hope you believe into change. You understand the power of change, and you understand the power of the skill I call adaptability. You gotta be adaptability machine, because you will be able to strike any deals and cut any deals with anyone and create the evolutionary stable strategy which will bring you closer to the result and the outcome which you want to achieve in your life. That's what I wanted to cover in this first part of this step, which I called the natural course of changes. All right? Now, second part was the power of experiments. A keyword experiments here, guys. How do we start training the adaptability? How do we actually use that beautiful and unique intangible skill? How do we use it into our advantage? How do we work with it in the most efficient, precise, and productive way? Well, the answer is we have to create the habit of experimentation. The experiments is the key word here. And I will explain you why is that important and why I suggest to look at life as the experiments. Because as soon as we're going to start changing, and remember that exercise we had with our thumbs, how much of discomfort did we feel when we had to change the thumbs? How confused and a little bit anxious and frustrated were we? And that was only changing the thumbs. Imagine what kind of scale of events might happen in our life when we try to change something more important, more critical in our life, like our health, like our business, like our relationships. How much of the discomfort we might feel. And that discomfort might push us down and let us procrastinate. But we need to adapt, and we need to have some kind of method which will help us to get out of that procrastination mode. Do not get stuck on the failures. Because as soon as we're going to get stuck on the failures and we're going to get obstacles and problems and issues on the way and discomforts, We're gonna call them failures, we're gonna call them mistakes, we're gonna call them any negative words we can just to put them aside and not proceed with them. So that's why, in my opinion, we're better off calling anything what we do in life an experiment. And in order for experiment to succeed, we have to have a goal in life. But we are all here in this program because we have a goal and we want to achieve that goal, that outcome and result. And to achieve that, we have to change some areas of our lives for the better, right? So try to imagine, just for sake of this video, let's make an experiment about the experiments, right? Try to imagine that your goals in life and your life itself is the set of experiments which you do in order to find the shortest way. Remember, the program name is the shortcut. Let's find the shortcut from here to our goals, to achieve our goals. And let's do it for the experimentation, because experiments will help us to find that most efficient way how to get our outcomes and results. Does it make sense? I think it does. So therefore, I think it's very beneficial for us to look at anything what we do as experiments which move us towards to our goals. And in case if our result of our experiment will be negative, the whole movement towards the goal will still be positive, because experiment might fail only if you don't perform it, meaning you don't make an experiment, or the result of the experiment did not bring you closer to the goal. That's why it's important, together with experimentation, in order to practice that skill of adaptability, to also understand clearly what are your goals in life, because you have to have them on the horizon, because those goals are going to be your northern star towards which you're moving. And while you're moving towards that star, you're making the experiments on the way. And the result of the experiments are supposed to help you to make those steps towards and get you towards your goals, right? Like Thomas Edison, by the way, he lived the life of experiments. He made thousands and thousands of experiments. Yes, he failed a lot of them, but a lot of those, as he said himself, taught him what not to do, and that would still step forward. You know, those experiments failed in their nature as an experiment with the conclusion, but they did not fail him to move forward to his goals. And as a result, he said, I made thousands of experiments and I made thousands of mistakes and failures, quote unquote, which I ended up to patent afterwards. He actually created, I think, like he patented like 1,200 of his experiments. 1,200, just think about it. So we have to go through the experiments. And by the way, sometimes in our life, we are making the change just for changing's sake. We are also making the change out of our emotions. We come from the place of our emotions and we're trying to make the change. And that change most probably will be completely random. And the change will not move us towards our goal because we're not actually consciously making that change. So it's not efficient place. You see, I'm not saying bad or good, I'm saying it's not an efficient way to start from the place of your emotions. For example, you're angry, you're so frustrated and pissed, and you said, okay, I'm gonna change the approach, I'm gonna do this now. We give up too early because we come from the place from emotions. But we have to come from the place of the science. That's why I'm gonna be introducing you today the science of experimentations. Actually, the exact blueprint of how to make experiment super productive and get you towards to your goal. And that was created and performed and practiced by himself, Thomas Edison, guys. The light bulb inventor, the GE company creator, and so on and so on. And as he said, and he was laughing, he said, a lot of people laughed at me because I have performed so many experiments, but guys, I ended up to patent them all. How great is that? He says, who is laughing now, right? So, to train adaptability And to make sure it becomes your habit, you have to start experiment with the things in order to change them. And you have to start experiment and see what would be the most efficient way to make that change. And then eventually make that change and get towards to your goal. So first, set up your goals and understand what is your goal. And second, imagine now you have to start experimenting with the things in order to get yourself towards to that goal. How do we experiment? Well, there are 7 stages, 7 steps of how to experiment using scientific method, the same Thomas Edison was using, not the one which comes from your emotions and the place of your emotional state, which is a less efficient method and might get you off the track and leave you on that station where you procrastinate and being in your comfort zone when the train of change, train of improvement, train of the better ride, it just passes you by. Okay, so 7 stages. I'm going to list them all and I'm going to explain them to you in example. So first step is you have to ask yourself a question. The second is you have to start researching the answer. Try to find the answer. The third one is you have to make the hypothesis. After you found the answer, you might hypothesize that that might be good answer and I might start implementing it. The fourth one is actually implementing it, testing it, trying it out. The fifth one is observing what is happening when I'm trying it out. The sixth one is analyzing what has happened after some time me trying it out. And the seventh is getting the feedback, concluding, and pivoting if necessary. And I'm going to explain you it with the different examples, with the different areas of our life. Let's take our health. First, let's ask ourselves a question. Let's say your goal, remember first you have to set up the goal. Let's say your goal is to lose weight. Okay? So what kind of question you ask yourself? Well, you ask yourself, hey, what are the ways of losing weight, right? I'm wondering, I want to understand what are the ways to lose weight. So that's the question you ask yourself. The second I said what you need to do is start researching and look for answers. So now you literally go on the internet or you talk to your buddies or you talk to professionals and you start to explore what are the ways to lose weight. The third one, you need to come up with a hypothesis. In this case, it would be okay, you found the way of how to actually lose weight. And let's say you found the way, well, I just need to cut the amount of food I eat by 1/3. You have hypothesizes that if I'm going to do that, I'm going to lose weight. Oh, interesting. Let's experiment with that. And you get to the fourth state, which is testing. You're physically starting to do that. Every single time you eat, you cut your regular portion by 1/3 and you put it aside and you eat the rest, right? And then, and by the way, at this stage, most of us stay. That us being stubborn and seeing the world in black and white. That the running, remember, our knees hurt, our legs hurt, everything hurts, but we still keep running. We keep testing it, but we don't go and transform to the next stage, which is observing. We need to observe now and see what's happening. In this case of the health and us trying to lose the weight, we look at ourselves in the mirror and we see the obvious signs and we feel like, wow, I'm losing weight, so probably experiment is going well and I'm actually getting to my goal. All right, let's continue. That was the observation. The next thing what you need to do, you have to analyze. And in this case, it would be, okay, let's analyze now. Yes, I am losing weight, but let's look at the obvious signs of my body. What's happening? Well, what happening is I'm losing my weight from the top of my body, but on my waist, around the hips, I still have a lot of fat. Maybe not a lot of, but still some fat, and it's not going away. It's actually the same way it was before. And that's what you got through analysis. Being observant, remember? awareness. You're being aware of what's actually happening and whether experiment is going well or not. And now you actually started to learn with an experiment, but you might conduct maybe other experiment afterwards, because you now understand you not only want to lose the weight, but you want to lose the weight in a particular places, in particular spots and parts of your body. You see, and now the experiments and the result of the experiments does not become that certain anymore, right? And the last step, the seventh, what you make is you make the conclusion. And you maybe ask your friends, hey, what do you think? And they say, looks like you lost some weight. You have a little bit thinner cheeks and maybe shoulders and stuff like that. But around the waist, you're kind of the same. So did you really lose any weight, right? And by that you understand, wow, I have to adapt. Remember? I have to adapt. And what I do is I actually go, and now I know I want to lose the weight around my waist, right? Around my hips. So now I have to repeat the experiment and start from not the first step though, because I still have this question of how losing my weight. I have to start from the second step. So you go that cycle of those 7 steps again and again and again. In this case, I do what? What was the second step? Research. I now research of how to lose the weight around my waist, right? And then I found the ways how to do that, and then I make the hypothesis, and maybe the hypothesis says I have to work out my abs, and my abs will get rid of the, this more fat area around my waist. And now I'm starting what? Testing it, doing it, and I'm starting observing it, whether it's happening. And if it's happening, I'm happy about it and I'm keep doing it. And then I have started to analyze it. Okay, so am I losing still weight? Yes. Okay, is that going off the waist? Yes, perfect. Conclusion, I have to keep doing that same thing. So there were 2 iterations here, guys. But the thing is that this is the perfect case scenario, but you might not find that perfect way of how to lose not only your weight, but also lose a little bit of fat around your waist. You might fail sometimes, but you would never fail if you would look at this and do experiments, because as I said, experiments itself is in the first case might be not that positive. In that case, you kind of were losing weight, but you still had the same round things around your waist, which you were not happy about. So your perception of the result of that experiment was negative. But overall, the positive change has happened because of that experiment. Why? Because you got yourself closer to the goal, and the goal is to lose the weight. Did you lose some weight? Yes, you did. You just did it around the part of your body you wanted to lose it around, right? That's the difference in mentality as well. As soon as you start experimenting, the result of experiment might be negative, but it can impact you and your results in your life positively because you are moving forward towards your goal. If that failed quote-unquote experiment brought you towards to the goal, it's not a failure. It's just another way how to understand and make your journey to the goal more efficient. How about that? And by the way, another example from a different area. I hope those examples help you out. I kind of invest your time and my time in those examples now, less theory, more practice, just for you to maybe get a grasp of this formula of how do you actually practice the adaptability. And by doing those experiments and going through the life by experimenting, you are training that muscle of adaptability, and you become the adaptability machine, because anything you do, you experiment. And your experiment does what? Makes a lot of different changes, make you tweak them, pivot them, and not get stuck on them, not live in this world of black and white, getting you closer to the what evolutionarily stable strategy. That's what experimentation does with you. So that's why you have to train the habit of experimentation in order to start and to be adaptability machine, guys. Okay, another example with your business. Let's say you want to make your sales grow, right? So you ask yourself the question first, is the question, okay, how do I increase my sales? You start researching, you start to figure it out for your company, your particular setup of the team and everything, your industry and stuff. What are the most efficient way how to increase sales? Then you find something. You make the hypothesis. Okay, that thing gonna work for me, right? And this is some kind of new methodology, let's say. How do you communicate with people? So now you're starting to test it. Maybe you even got the test group. Only part of your sales team might now perform that to understand how does it work, right? And then what you do, you're starting to observe. You start to see what's happening, but not only what's happening with your sales results, but also what's happening with your salespeople, how that affects them. That's what observation should do. You have to be aware not only your results, but how that affects the people. And then you do the analysis and you realize, just for the example's sake, you realize that it did increase your sales, but it gave the negative effect and impacted your salespeople because they started to be more anxious, they started to be more frustrated, they are not feeling comfortable with that way of selling things, or maybe they were not prepared to do that. So now you have to make and conclude, and your conclusion is, okay, so that did bring me closer to my goal of increasing my sales, but I must not stop here. I have to now research and find a way how to actually expand on my team and make sure my team feel comfortable about that. You see what experiments have done just for this case. For the case when you would just done that and forget about it and be happy only for these numbers and results, you might lose your team because of that, because for them it would not be evolutionary stable strategy. For them it would be super stressful. For them it would not be something they would and could adapt to without your help, without you launching another experiment and pivoting and trying. You being adaptable just helped you to save your team and start working on the things and experiment with the things which will make your team more adaptable and feel comfortable within this new methodology of sales. And then the results, when you would go through all the testing observation, you would create a lot stronger team who would bring you a lot more sales for your business. Is that powerful or what? If it's not, I know what it is, guys. This is super powerful. And we are getting close to an end of this step. I want to summarize. I know I dropped a lot of knowledge and a lot of science at you guys, but I was trying to also combine it with as many examples out of human beings' life, out of life of our nature and our environments around us for you to understand the topic. So let's conclude and see what have we learned today. By the way, before that, one last thing, I'm sorry about that, about the experimentations. As you've seen already, right? Our experiments, what is important in experiment? Well, the first thing is important, the time and the frequency. How often and for how long period of time you keep doing the same experiment all over again. And my rule of thumb is from 1 to 3 months. As soon as you start doing something new, do it for at least a month to 3 months. That's the time you need for your mind, not only for the strategy and the technicality and practicality of the things and step and setups and the systems to adjust, but also for your mind. We are rewiring your mind throughout this program as well. That's why we need so many steps, because we want to rewire your mind. We want to shift your mind and start thinking differently. The same here. In order to experiment and truly understand and conclude the experiment, you have to do it at least for 1 month to 3 months. But at the same time, don't do the experiment and perform experiment for too long, because there is no such a term as the mistake or failure unless that's an experiment which were going on for too long. That's what we and I and other people, and you probably heard of it as well, call as a mistake. Mistake is an experiment which have been done for too long. We being stubborn, we being black and white about the experiment. Don't be black and white, adapt and see the result and conclude and give yourself at most 3 months, at least 1 month, and within this period of time, figure out whether the experiment was successful or not, whether it brought you closer to your goal, and then start pivoting, or maybe pivot is not necessarily because you have already adapted and found that middle ground, that evolutionary stable strategy, which is super stable and brings you beautiful result. Then you just go on and see what kind of other areas you want to improve by experimentations. Another thing which is very important is these cycles. Remember these 7 steps? You gotta go through the cycles, you gotta go through the iterations, and my golden rule is at least 3 to 7 iterations. Sometimes you get lucky and you get the answers and experiments in a perfect way, and you get the shortest way how to get to your outcomes right away after a couple of experiments, but on average it takes 3 to 7 cycles to go over and iterate and pivot and then research and then test and then observe and then again conclude and then pivot and then research and test and observe until you get to the point where you feel like and you see the huge result, massive results out of all these experimentations, right? Because why? I have this statistics, this crazy statistics. 50% of us after first failure quit. After second failure, 80% of us quit. After 3 failures, 95% of us quit. So I want to make sure with this knowledge today, you are gonna keep going even after 3 failures. Because if you're gonna keep going and if you're gonna be keep pivoting and experimenting and do it more than 3 times, more than 3 cycles, you're already gonna get and put yourself in this 5% of people who survive and get to the point of the result with the most efficient way. So don't stop. Your goal is to overcome at least 3 failures and continue doing it, continue pivoting, experimenting, changing the experiments, but not doing it longer than 3 months and not lesser than 1 month. Okay? All right. Now let's get to the conclusion. What did we learn today? Well, first of all, we have learned that change is something we strive for. Change is something we actually learning how to make during this program. In the end of this program, we're actually going to be able to create the change at any area of our life by following up some strategies and by applying some skills. And we learned that one of the most important skills to create any change in your life is your adaptability. We also learned that the change is the basic law of nature. And we would rather go with the flow, as they say, and go with the change and have the great relationships with the change than just sit aside and, observe how the change is happening to us, not for us. We want to change and happening for us. And for that, we want to train that skill called adaptability. And how to train that skill? Well, by experimentation, by setting up your life and your goals first, and then going through your life towards your goals through the experiments which you perform in different areas of your life. Health, wealth, love, happiness, fulfillment, anything you want to make a change in. And we have to make it in a way we experiment, we pivot, we observe, we conclude, and we repeat, and we make multiple iterations. At the same time, at any change, at any experiment, we have to cut the deal with ourselves, with environment, with other people, to create this evolutionary stable strategy where interaction and choices of multiple parties eventually become stable. We should stop thinking black and white. We should live in the life of shades of gray, and we should create this evolutionary stable strategy rather than collapse and destroy whatever we have by looking at the things as black and white. How great is that? I hope it was useful to you guys. I want to finish up this step with this serenity prayer. I think it's super relevant to this step today. And a lot of you might already know it, but let me repeat it. So serenity prayer goes as follows. God, give me serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Give me courage to change things I can change. And give me wisdom to understand the difference. How powerful is that? God, give me serenity to accept the things we cannot change. And by the way, what are the things we cannot change? Well, for starters, we cannot and should not change the things which will not bring us to our goals, to our outcomes and results. It's going to be wasted time. So we're not supposed to experiment with the things, the result of which will not get us closer to the goal. That's how important the goals are and setting up those goals. And we're going to be talking about that in upcoming sessions. As a matter of fact, in a couple of videos, in a couple of steps, we're going to be actually building the roadmap of your goals for your life. So you're going to be able to use this concept there. So yeah, give me the serenity to actually, accept things which we don't need to change or we cannot change, and leave them aside. Give me courage. You gotta have this courage to actually change the things we can. And now, remember, courage helps us to go through the fears. Courage helps us to go through the anxiety, and break through. But at the same time, we now know we have to train this adaptability and go through the experimentation and build this muscle of experiments. We're gonna get us closer to our results. And then the last but not least, God, give me a wisdom to know the difference. Because as soon as we know the difference, and now we know the difference, we gotta work on the things and change the things which will help us to get us closer to the outcomes and the results we want. And the rest of the things we should put aside because they're gonna lower our efficiency and our productivity on the way, on the journey to a better life. Get it? I hope you did, guys. Let's get to the last point of this step, which are the questions and the homework. You thought I'm gonna leave you without the homework? No way. This is alone. That's video alone, by the way. If you wouldn't watch anything else but this, I hope you understand now that that alone will help you and would help you to at least create the blueprint, the roadmap of any change in your life, to come up with any experiments which you must to perform in order to change your life for the better. So it's a very powerful step and we have to practically start working on it. Therefore, you gotta do your homework. You gotta keep going because that rewires your mind and your mind becomes what? More adaptable. We're trying to change your mind, guys. We gotta work on it. So the question you should ask yourself, the first question, how adaptable am I? How adaptable are you in any area of your life? If you think you are, think of the ways. First of all, answer the questions, why do you think so? Second of all, think of the way how to improve your adaptability. Can you be even more adaptable? Can you make more experiments and things like that? The second question you ask yourself, am I experimenting enough? If you are, how can I improve my experiments? How can I make them even more efficient and productive? And maybe that 7 steps which you learned today might help you on this way. If you don't experiment, think of that. What kind of experiments you might want to start doing? In which area you want to start doing experiments? And that based on the area of your life which you want to improve, obviously. And last but not least, create the roadmap. Create the list of all the experiments you want to conduct in any area of your life, maybe in all of them. Maybe create the list of experiments you want to conduct for all of the areas of your life which you want to improve and change for the better, and start experimenting. Launch some of them, don't launch a lot of them. Launch and start conducting some of those experiments by asking yourself a question, then researching for an answer, and a lot of answers you're going to be getting via this course, via this program. That's what it's made for. And then you make a hypothesis, and then you start testing it, and then you observe it, and then you analyze it, and then you conclude it, and then you decide whether you have to pivot, that you have to tweak it and repeat it again and again and again, unless you have the results and the goal what you want out of that area of your life. All right? Okay, that step was filled and packed with goodies, with a lot of knowledge and science undropped on you. Don't get overwhelmed. Even if you did get overwhelmed, watch this video a couple of times, maybe 3, 4, 5 times. It's important video, guys. Click on a pause. Pause this for a second. Think it through. Put the notes for yourself. Work with these questions. Then go back at the video again and watch it again. And as a result, I promise you, you will become the adaptability machine. And you will become the experimentation machine. And you will build a very huge muscle of adaptability and huge muscle of habit of experimentation. And that will help you to make that same change for the better in any area of your life. And if that is guaranteed, because you're gonna perform and do that with the science, with the scientific methods, which Thomas Edison himself has used to patent like 12,000 different experiments. All right? Okay, I hope it was useful. I hope it was fun, enough experiments and examples out of our life, enough of proof and theory, and I see you at the next step. Have a wonderful homework, guys.